Generally, when talking about textures or materials, we refer to how objects will look or feel as we see them in the real world. And in this case, we have a grayed out setting here. And if we were to have this as a real beach with a real pool and real palm tree with leaves and all, we will be seeing sort of like some brilliant colors going across this project, as well as some subtle colors for the beach and all. And we can easily achieve that by switching to another viewport shading dictated by these two guys over here. Previously, we've worked with the wireframe view where we can see the polygons and meshes for the assets we are building in our scene, and we have worked with the solid view to see it in a gray like look. And now we'll be talking about the material preview mode. The material preview mode in Blender helps us to rapidly view whatever materials have been assigned to the objects in our scene. In this case, we are not seeing anything right now, and that's because if you click on this drop down here, you would see that we have scene lights and scene world checked. Now what this means is that we should look at the scene, the viewport, and take the light data from whatever light source you have in the viewport. We also expect to take light data from the scene world. And remember, in the first session I mentioned that this vast span of land is what we call the world, and the world is pretty dark right now. It's grayish, and that's why everywhere is looking pretty dim, and we have no light source in our scene. That's why everywhere is dark. So to just quickly view our scene using the default setting for Blender, we can uncheck this and uncheck the scene world, and now you can see some default panoramas of which we are now getting our light data. In this case, if I tap on this ball here, you can see that I have different modes I can switch to. So I can tap and see the different responses to the light data gotten from that panorama. So we can just try different panorama images and you can see that. Now we can use this as our default light source while we add basic textures and materials to this scene. So let's start with that. There are different ways to add materials to an object in the scene. So let's start with, let's say, the table. Go over to the properties panel and go down to this material properties section here, just below the vertex group section, and we can click on new, and this assigns a material to the table. In this case, I can rename this as table top, and let's say we want to have a brownish table. So I can click on the base color option here and make it a little bit brownish, reduce the color a bit, and I think I like this color. Now I've been able to add the new material to this tabletop, and if I wanted to add the same material to the legs of this table, I do not need to create a new material for that. I can just go ahead to the properties panel under the material properties and search for the new table that I created, and I click on tabletop. So now I've been able to add the same material to the legs of the table. Bear in mind that if you make any edits to this material, it's going to affect the entire material for the tabletop and the table foot. So if you wanted to create another material for the table foot, taking reference from the tabletop, you can click on this new material and it will duplicate that same material, giving you a baseline for the base color. So you can now work with that and make it, let's say, lighter and all. So we're going to do the same for adding the same materials to the chair. So let's say we had this for the tabletop, for example, and remember we created an entirely new chair material, an entirely new object for the chair, so that's why we have to do that for that aspect. So for the cushion, I would like to make a new material, and let's call this cushion, and let's say it's kind of like teal. So let's do the same thing, select the new objects, and this is good. So I'll do the same thing for, let's say, the rocks. Select one rock, click on new, call that rock, enter, and let's make it a bit grayish, and we can add some life into it. Good. So I think I like how things are turning out. The next thing now is I can easily add material to the leaves, green leaves. So let's make this green and change the base color. So let's make this green and deepen the color a bit. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the tree trunk. I can create a new material and let's say base color, let it be sort of yellowish brownish kind of trunk, and I think I like this. Let's make it a bit lighter, tilt towards the reddish region, and yeah, good. So we're making a lot of progress. So we can now go down to the ground and let's add a new material and call this ground. So the beach sand is kind of light brown, so let's do that. Light brown, and this is good. But if you notice, we have the pool edge also taking that light brown color, and we can shake things up by, you know, switching to the edit mode. Then we can go down to creating a new material for the same object, and this time we would of course create a new material, and we will need to go to the vertex select, go to the pool edge in this case, and click on select so that we can assign a new material to just this region. So we go over here and let's call this pool edge. Go ahead to assign it. So you see that immediately I applied this pool edge material to this section here, it became white because the default color is white. So this time I want it to be kind of like brick color or so. So I think I like this. I can now tab out and you can see the edge of the pool is given another color. So we'll still need to do the same thing for the bottom of the pool. So this time I can go back, tab back to the edit mode and go to the vertex select and go to the pool base, click on select. You can't see it right now because we have the water toggled on, so let's toggle that off. So we can now go back to the materials properties, create a new material and call this, of course you have to click on new, then call this pool base, and we can assign it a different material. So you see the same thing, it became white, and I want it to be kind of bluish a bit, so I think this is good enough, and once you tab back you should get that effect. Awesome. Now the final one we've all been waiting for. So now we're going to work with the water body, and we're going to go further than what we've been doing, so far, in the sense that for water you expect it to be transparent, you expect it to have this glistering look and feel to it, and this is what we're going to be discussing shortly. So we'll start with selecting the water body here, the water object. We'll go to the materials properties window, click on new and call this water. Then of course we're going to go to the base color and make it blue. Let's say we want it to be deep blue in a way, about this, yeah. So once we've done that, we're not just going to stop there. As you can see, there are many more effects that we can work with, and let me just spread this out a bit so that you can see the full names for these nodes here. To achieve that transparent effect for any object, for any material assigned to an object, you would need to crank up the transmission. Now this transmission helps us to add this glistering transparent look to it. I will not take it to the top, let's just leave it about here. And physics lets us know that the IOR for water is 1.33. So this will allow us to see objects closer than they are when we're standing. Let's say we're standing at the edge of this pool and we're looking at our phone that fell into the pool. It will look pretty closer than how it is actually positioned because of IOR. So let's see another thing we should take note of. We can now crank down the roughness because water ain't that rough. It has this shine to it, so we can crank that down, and if we want we can add some metallic look to it, but for now I'm good. And I think I like the effect I'm getting. It's kind of shiny. Now you might not be seeing the exact effect you want because of course it's still looking like a solid material with some shine to it, and it's not giving us that transparent look. We're not seeing the edge of the pool, we're not seeing the bottom of the pool, but this can be fixed. We are currently in the material preview mode, and this works with Blender's Eevee engine. And let's just go back to this for us to make more sense. Over here in our properties window we can see render properties, and we're currently using the render engine set to Eevee, and this is just the fastest way to render whatever image you have in your scene. So it's the most efficient way to do so, or fastest way to do so. And if we want to work with a more complex render engine, we can actually go to this drop down here and go to cycles. Then we can also go down to this device and go to GPU compute, especially if you have a GPU that is efficient for the job. I will switch to experimental. Now I'm not seeing anything happen right now, and that's because by default Material Preview is on EV Engine. So we can now go to this last one, this last guy here that says the render preview, and this shows us the final look and feel for whatever assets we have. And you can see that we're getting some nice fine effect over here. Before we go further, I would like to mention that if you need to set your render engine, you just need to go to the edit preferences and you go to system. Then you can turn on the most efficient GPU you're working with. So this is how to set it up.